This is the Basketball Captain's Info presentation from UTA Intramural Sports. This presentation is for the spring 2020 semester. In this presentation, we'll cover our policies, where we play, the rules of the game, our scheduling software, IAMLeagues, and the league schedule, awards for our champions, upcoming events, and how to contact us. The intramural sports staff is comprised of the Assistant Director, Travis Langford, as well as student program assistants, student supervisors, and student officials. If you need to get in contact with us, please email us at iamsports@uta.edu. Our website is uta.edu/intramuralsports. You can find links to our rules, handbook, policies and procedures, as well as other events that are going on at campus recreation. IAMLeagues is our scheduling software that we'll talk about. The rules in the handbook can also be found on IAMLeagues. Eligibility to play intramural sports is available to current UTA students, faculty and staff that have a MAC membership, and campus recreation membership holders. All of these are allowed to participate in intramural sports activities. Alumni must have a membership to play. All players are required to check in with the ID checker before the game. If you don't have your ID, you cannot play that night. 2 campus recreation membership holders are allowed on a team, maximum. The MAC members must show proof of membership to play. Players are not allowed to play on 2 different teams in the same division. A random eligibility check is held on the field, and a full check is held in the intramural sports office. If the game in which a player signs in is a forfeit, they're still considered to have played in that game and to be on that team's roster. Players may be added at any point in the season or postseason, so should you have problems finding players on a given night, you can still add to your roster. Game time is forfeit time, and a forfeit earns your team a 2 in sportsmanship, which we'll talk about on the next slide. If you know that your team can't make a game, you may call the intramural sports office or email iamsports@uta.edu. If this is done by 3 p.m. on the day of the game, or 3 p.m. Friday for a game on the weekend, this is called a default and will carry a sportsmanship rating of 2.5. Players are not allowed to switch teams after the second week of the season, and if they do before the second week, they will have to sit out a minimum of 1 week in order to transfer between teams. Our sportsmanship system is as follows. Teams will be awarded a sportsmanship grade for each game based on their conduct. A 4.0 or an A is above and beyond conduct and sportsmanship. Good conduct and sportsmanship will be assigned a B or a 3. Average conduct and sportsmanship is a 2. Below average conduct and sportsmanship is a 1. And an F, or 0 points, is poor conduct and sportsmanship. Teams must maintain a 2.5 average in order to be eligible for playoffs. And once in the playoffs, a team must maintain that 2.5 average in order to remain in the playoffs. The way our structure works in the playoffs is that every team makes the playoffs, except for those that don't qualify because of sportsmanship or forfeit. Unsportsmanlike behavior will result in a caution, which could be penalties within the game, ejection, suspension, or a judicial hearing or dismissal from school in some of the most extreme cases. In all of our intramural sports sites, there is no smoking, no alcohol, and no tobacco products. All intramural sports participants play at their own risk. However, the Department of Campus Recreation encourages all participants to have medical insurance in case of injury. Every team makes the playoffs, except for teams that have 2 or more forfeits, or teams that default or forfeit greater than a combined 50% of their scheduled games, or any teams with less than a 2.5 sportsmanship average. If there are enough teams, there will be 2 divisions, a competitive bracket with teams that have a win-loss record above 500, and teams that have a win-loss record below 500 will go into the recreational bracket. During playoffs, the scheduling is done online, and the priority of selection has to do with the standings, the seed during the regular season. That's decided primarily by win-loss record, and a tiebreaker will be sportsmanship, and then which team has more forfeits or defaults, if they've played head-to-head, and finally our last tiebreaker is points against. Unfortunately, it is impossible to ensure that every team plays at their usual time, so be prepared to play on a day time that is not unusual. We don't reschedule games. Remember, you can still add players all the way through the championship game. Basketball will be played in the Maverick Activities Center On gym courts 3 and 4, a physical ID is required to play, even though you can get into the facility with a hand scan or the Fusion app. Teams will play 1 game per week on Monday or Thursday, depending on which division you signed up for. We will notify all players via IM Leagues if the game is canceled for any reason. We will also post on our social media sites. Please make sure that all of your players are on the roster before the first game. If you have any issues with this on IM Leagues, please email imsports@uta.edu. Teams must have jerseys that match, and all of those jerseys must have a number. You cannot use orange for your team's jersey color. Campus Recreation has jerseys if your team does not. All players must wear athletic shoes. This means no bare feet, flip-flops, metal cleats, or boots. No players can wear jewelry on the courts, and shirts must be tucked in. 5 players will constitute a team, and you must have a minimum of 4 to begin play. Timing consists of 2 20-minute halves, and each team will have 2 timeouts per game. These timeouts must come from the floor. They cannot be called by players on the bench. We'll talk about coaches in a little bit. The clock will run continuously for the first 38 minutes of the game. That only stops for injuries or timeouts during that segment. In the last 2 minutes of the game, the clock will stop under normal basketball rules, things like out of bounds, referees' whistles, etc. At game time, the opposing team will be awarded the ball and the clock will start if one team is not present. For each minute the opposing team is late, they will be awarded 1 point. After 10 minutes, the game is a forfeit and the final score is 10-0. The winning team is awarded a 3 in sportsmanship and the forfeiting team is awarded a 2. As previously discussed, teams will play 1 game each week, and there is no overtime in the regular season. One thing that UTA Intramural Sports has is a blue line on the MAC floors, and these will be the 3-point line in all of the divisions. All technical fouls and flagrant fouls will automatically be worth 2 points. The mercy rule is that if a team is ahead by 20 or more points at 2 minutes, or ahead by 30 or more points with 10 minutes or less remaining, that team will be the winner. Personal fouls and team fouls are recorded. The bonus begins at 7 fouls, and the double bonus begins at 10 team fouls in each half. If a double foul occurs, which is when both teams foul, a point of interruption is where we will resume play. A technical foul results in an automatic 2 points for the opponent. Flagrant and intentional fouls are also options to penalize teams, and if a player is ejected, they must meet with the intramural sports professional staff before they might be reinstated. During free throws, the lowest spaces must be occupied. The others are optional. The players inside the lane can enter once the ball is released, and players outside the 3-point line and the shooter can release upon the ball's contact with the rim. Non-players are not allowed on the team bench. If a team has a coach, that person must also be on the roster and checked into the game. A designated coach can be permitted to call timeouts and address officials, and teams are responsible for the behavior of their fans and bench players. The competitive division champions will receive t-shirts, and a player has to have played in at least 2 games to be eligible for a t-shirt. If a player misses the championship game, they can come into the office to pick up their shirt up until the end of the semester. Every champion will receive a wing party at Pluckers in Arlington. They will receive 100 boneless bites per team. You have to be present to receive the boneless bites, and please take care of the waitstaff. Tip them as if you were buying the wings. You have to use the coupon before the end of the semester. Typically the Friday after graduation is your deadline. We're glad you're playing this sport with us. Please take a look at the other sports we have available. Our team sports are on the left, and the individual dual sports that we have to offer that are free are on the right. All of these can be signed up for on IM Leagues. As we said earlier, all of our rules and policies and other information can be found on our website. Give us a call at 817-272-3277 or send us an email at imsports@uta.edu. We also now have an Instagram, so follow us at UTA IM Sports and like us on Facebook.